The regional dealer meeting happened at the Marriott Conference Center in Wichita. Annual event. Every John Deere dealer within 200 miles. 43 dealerships represented. Manufacturers, representatives. Corporate people. Sales, awards. Recognition dinners. Equipment demonstrations. The whole industry showing up to celebrate success and push new strategies. I wasn't invited, wasn't a dealer, but I was there anyway. Had business at the hotel that day. Consulting, meeting in another conference room. Happened to walk past their ballroom during lunch break. Door was open. Could see inside. Could hear the presentation. Could hear them laughing. The sales director was showing photos on the massive screen. Case studies of equipment purchases. Examples of customers making good and bad decisions. Educational content showing dealers what to encourage and what to discourage. Standard industry presentation. Then my photo appeared on screen. Me standing beside my 1978 John Deere 7700 combine. The combine I'd bought 3 years earlier in 2015. Paid $22,000 cash for a 37-year-old combine instead of financing a new S690 for $450,000. The combine that worked perfectly. That harvested my 800 acres annually. That cost me approximately $3,000 a year to maintain. That had saved me from equipment debt. That had been the smartest purchase I'd made in 20 years of farming. The sales director pointed at my photo. Said, "This is what we're fighting against. Farmers who think old equipment is viable. Who refuse to finance modern equipment. Who operate like it's 1980. This particular farmer, Kenneth Morrison. Anderson County paid $22,000 cash for a combine from 1978 instead of upgrading. We had him in the dealership. Had him looking at new combines. Lost the sale because he wouldn't finance and wouldn't see the value in modern technology. This is the mindset we need to change." The room laughed. 43 dealers. Probably 200 people total including staff. All laughing at the photo of me and my old combine. All agreeing this was exactly the problem. All seeing me as the example of what was wrong with farming. The farmer stuck in the past. The customer who wouldn't spend. The lost opportunity. The failure. Bradley Richardson, one of the largest dealers in Kansas, said, "We all have customers like this. Farmers who pinch every penny. Who keep equipment running 40 years past its useful life. Who refuse to see that modern equipment pays for itself. Who cost themselves money being cheap." Morrison is the perfect example. He's farming 800 acres with a combine that should be in a museum. He'll realize his mistake when it fails catastrophically during harvest. When one breakdown costs him more than a new combine would have. When he learns the hard way that old equipment is expensive equipment. More laughter. More agreement. More dealers sharing their own stories of farmers like me. Farmers who wouldn't buy. Who wouldn't upgrade. Who wouldn't see reason. Who operated outside the modern agricultural equipment economy. Who were the enemy of dealer profit. Who represented everything wrong with farming. I stood outside that ballroom door, listening to 200 people mock me. Mock my combine. Mock my decision. Mock my approach. All assuming I was wrong. All assuming I was cheap. All assuming I didn't understand modern agriculture. All assuming I'd fail and learn and eventually come back ready to buy properly. All completely certain they were right and I was catastrophically wrong. None of them knew who I was besides a name and a county. None of them knew my background. None of them knew what I'd built. None of them knew that the farmer they were mocking had more agricultural and business expertise than everyone in that room combined. None of them knew anything except that I'd bought old instead of new and paid cash instead of financing. That was enough. That made me the perfect target for mockery. My name is Kenneth Morrison. I'm 58 years old now. This happened in 2018, 6 years ago. I was 52 then. That 1978 John Deere 7700 combine they laughed at. Still running. Still harvesting. Still costing me approximately $3,000 a year to maintain. Still proving them wrong. Still demonstrating that old equipment properly maintained beats new equipment heavily financed. Still working after 6 years of mockery. Still profitable after 6 years of everyone assuming it would fail. But here's what those dealers didn't know. What they had no way of knowing because they never asked. Because they assumed they understood my situation based on what I bought instead of learning who I was buying it. I wasn't a struggling farmer trying to make do with old equipment because I couldn't afford new. I was a former agricultural equipment engineer. Worked for John Deere Corporate from 1987 to 2012. 25 years. Did R&D on combine technology. Designed harvesting systems. Understood equipment at a level dealers never would. Left corporate in 2012 to farm full-time. Took early retirement, pension, investments, knowledge. Base deeper than anyone in that ballroom possessed about the actual equipment they were selling. When I bought that 1978 7700 combine in 2015, I knew exactly what I was buying. Knew the engine, knew the harvesting system, knew the parts availability, knew the maintenance requirements, knew the expected lifespan, knew the total cost of ownership over a decade, knew everything. Made the decision based on engineering, analysis, and economic calculations dealers would never do because their profit model requires not doing them. I bought that combine because I knew it would outlast its purchase price plus maintenance costs would be a fraction of new equipment costs. Knew the mechanical simplicity meant reliability. Knew that combines from that era were built before planned obsolescence became standard. Knew that electronics and computers hadn't yet made equipment complex to the point of requiring dealer dependency. Knew what I was buying. Bought strategically. Bought correctly. The dealers laughing in that ballroom assumed I was ignorant. Assumed I didn't understand modern combines. Assumed I was making an uninformed decision that would cost me. They were laughing at someone with more combine engineering knowledge than anyone in their organizations. Laughing at someone who'd literally designed the systems they were trying to sell. Laughing at someone whose understanding of equipment economics was based on corporate-level data they'd never see. Laughing at someone who knew more than they did and had chosen differently because of that knowledge, not despite it. But they didn't know that, couldn't know that. Because they never asked, because they assumed, because the agricultural equipment industry operates on information asymmetry. Dealers know more than farmers. Manufacturers know more than dealers. Information flows one direction. Protects profit margins. Keeps customers dependent. Keeps them buying. Keeps them financing. The system works when farmers don't know enough to question it. Breaks down when farmers know more than dealers assume. I knew more. Made choices based on that knowledge. Got mocked for those choices by people who didn't know they were mocking expertise they didn't possess. The irony was profound. The confidence was misplaced. The mockery would eventually reverse. But they didn't know that in 2018. Wouldn't know that For years. Wouldn't understand until circumstances forced understanding. The agricultural equipment market collapsed in 2020. COVID, supply chains, chip shortages. Everything that could go wrong did. New equipment became scarce. Lead times extended to years. Prices exploded on available inventory. Farmers who'd always bought new couldn't get new. Couldn't wait years. Couldn't farm without equipment. Suddenly needed alternatives. Used equipment market exploded. Values tripled. That 1978 7,700 combine I'd bought for $22,000 in 2015, worth $65,000 by 2021, not because it had improved, because alternatives had disappeared, because new equipment wasn't available, because farmers desperate for harvest capacity would pay anything for working equipment, because the market had inverted, because scarcity changed everything. Dealers who'd mocked old equipment suddenly needed old equipment, needed inventory, needed something to sell when new wasn't available, needed to serve customers who couldn't wait 2 years for new combines, needed what they'd called obsolete, needed what they'd laughed at, needed what farmers like me had been quietly buying and maintaining for years. Bradley Richardson's dealership, the one who'd mocked me most vocally in that 2018 meeting, called me in 2021, his sales manager, asking if I'd consider selling my 7,700. They had a customer. Desperate. Needed a combine. Harvest approaching. Nothing new available. Would I sell? They'd pay well. They'd pay very well. They needed inventory. Needed anything that worked. Needed the equipment they'd spent years telling farmers was worthless. I said no. Said I needed it for my own harvest. Said I wasn't interested in selling equipment that worked. Said if they needed old combines, they should have taken them seriously years ago instead of mocking farmers who bought them. Said their situation was a predictable result of an industry model built on constant new equipment turnover. Said when new stops being available, old becomes essential. Said they should have seen this coming. Hung up. They called back 3 times. Offered more money each time. 70,000, 80,000. Finally, 90,000 for a combine I'd paid 22,000 for 6 years earlier. Desperate. Needing inventory. Needing to serve customers. Needing what they'd mocked. I said no each time. Needed my combine. Wasn't going to solve their inventory problem. Wasn't going to save them from the consequences of their own assumptions. But their situation gave me an idea. If dealers needed old equipment this badly, if used inventory had this much value, if the market had inverted this dramatically, maybe there was opportunity. Maybe the mockery could be reversed. Maybe the farmers who'd been laughed at could become the ones laughing. Maybe there was a way to demonstrate that the assumptions everyone had made were completely backwards. Richardson's dealership was struggling. Not just with inventory. With everything. Debt levels built for boom times in a bust market. Overhead sized for massive sales in a market where nothing was selling. Staff too large for revenue, too small. Real estate too expensive for margins too thin. Classic overextension. Classic assumption that good times last forever. Classic dealer failure pattern. I watched, waited, calculated. The dealership had 2 locations. One in a great location. Highway visible. Good property. Valuable real estate, regardless of dealer business. One in a poor location. Edge of town. Bad visibility. Property worth less than building. The business was failing. The locations had different values. The opportunity was becoming clear. In 2022, Richardson's dealership filed for bankruptcy protection. Couldn't service debt, couldn't make payments, couldn't sustain operations. Too leveraged, too expensive, too optimized for a market that no longer existed. Corporate John Deere was involved. Lenders were involved. Lawyers were involved. The dealership that had mocked me in 2018 was collapsing in 2022. 4 years from mockery to bankruptcy. 4 years from confidence to failure. 4 years from laughing at old equipment to failing despite new equipment. The bankruptcy court ordered asset sale. Both locations, all inventory, all real estate, all equipment. Complete liquidation. Corporate John Deere didn't want the locations. Already had other dealers in the region. Didn't need redundant dealerships. Lenders wanted money. Wanted highest bidder? Wanted maximum recovery? Wanted out. I bid on the better location, the highway visible property. 8 acres. Large building. Great location. Valuable, regardless of dealership use. I bid $11 million. All cash. No financing. No contingencies. Clean offer. Fast close. Everything bankruptcy courts love. Everything lenders want. Everything corporate needed. I won the bid. Bought the dealership location for $11 million cash. Money I'd saved from 25 years at John Deere Corporate plus pension plus investments, plus 20 years of profitable farming plus appreciated land holdings plus stock portfolio. Liquid assets I'd built quietly while everyone assumed I was poor because I bought old equipment. Capital I'd accumulated by doing exactly what they mocked, avoiding equipment debt, buying used, maintaining carefully, reinvesting profits. The irony was perfect. The dealer who'd mocked me was bankrupt. His vocation was owned by the farmer he'd laughed at. The sales director who'd shown my photo 243 dealerships was now explaining to corporate why the region needed restructuring. The system that had mocked old equipment had failed. The farmer who bought old equipment owned their real estate. Complete reversal. Total vindication. Perfect justice. But I didn't reopen it as a John Deere dealership. Didn't want to be part of that system. Didn't want to sell farmers into debt. Didn't want to profit from the financing model I'd spent years avoiding. Had a different idea, better idea. Idea that would prove my point permanently. I reopened it as used agricultural equipment specialist. Buy, sell, repair, maintain. Focus on equipment that's paid off. Equipment farmers own. Equipment that works. Equipment without payments. Everything the dealer system dismisses. Everything farmers actually need. Everything the mockery had been about. Complete philosophical opposite of what John Deere dealerships do. The business model is simple. Buy good used equipment. Evaluate it with engineering knowledge dealers don't have. Repair it properly. Maintain it correctly. Sell it at fair prices to farmers who want ownership over payments. Teach farmers total cost of ownership analysis. Help them make informed decisions. Prioritize their success over my profit. Operate transparently. Everything the dealer system isn't. The first piece of inventory I acquired, a 1978 John Deere 7700 combine. Not mine, a different one. Found one in Nebraska. Farmer retiring. Owned it 40 years. Maintained it perfectly. Wanted it to go to someone who'd appreciate it. I paid $30,000. Restored it completely. $6,000 in parts and labor. Sold it for $48,000 to a young farmer who couldn't afford a $300,000 used modern combine. He's farming successfully. Has no payments. Maintains it himself. Proving the same point I proved. Demonstrating the same strategy. Living the same vindication. That combine, the same model dealers laughed at in 2018, became my signature inventory. I specialize in them now. 7700s. I know them completely. Design systems like them at corporate. Understand every component. Can evaluate condition perfectly. Can repair anything. Can teach farmers how to maintain them. Can provide expertise dealers don't have. Can help farmers succeed with equipment dealers, mock. I've sold 47 combines in 4 years, mostly 7700s. Some older, some newer, all used, all properly evaluated, all sold to farmers who want ownership over debt, all performing well, all proving that the dealer mockery was wrong. That old equipment properly selected and maintained works. That financing isn't necessary. That ownership beats payments. That my approach wasn't foolish. Was actually sophisticated. Was actually correct. Was actually what farming needed. The business is profitable. Not as profitable as new equipment dealerships in boom times, but consistently profitable. Sustainable. Not dependent on financing. Not dependent on manufacturers' support. Not dependent on boom markets. Just dependent on farmers needing equipment and me helping them get equipment that serves them instead of equipment that profits me. Simple, honest, sustainable. Bradley Richardson, the dealer who mocked me most vocally in 2018, works now at another dealership. Smaller role. Less authority. Selling what someone else tells him to sell. He came into my facility 6 months ago. Didn't recognize it as his old location initially. Then realized. Then saw me. Then understood. The farmer he'd mocked owned his failed dealership location. Was running a successful business in the building he'd lost. Was helping farmers with the equipment he'd laughed at. Was proving everything he'd believed was wrong. He didn't say much. Looked around. Saw the used equipment. Saw the repair bay. Saw the farmers being helped. Saw the business model he'd never considered. Saw success built on everything he'd been taught was failure. Finally said, "You owned this place." I said, "Bought it from bankruptcy court. You remember? Your dealership. The one that failed after mocking farmers who bought old equipment. I'm the farmer you showed my photo to in 2018. Told 43 dealerships I was the problem. Told them I represented everything wrong with farming. Told them old equipment was the enemy. 4 years later, your dealership was bankrupt. 6 years later, I own this building and run a profitable equipment business, helping farmers avoid what destroyed yours. Funny how things work out." He left without responding. Couldn't respond. What do you say to that? What do you say when the farmer you mocked owns your failed dealership and runs a better business model in your old building? What do you say when everything you believed was proven wrong and everything you mocked was proven right? You don't say anything. You leave. You process. You face reality. You understand you were wrong about everything. The 1978 John Deere 7700 combine I bought in 2015 still works. Still harvests my 800 acres annually. Still costs approximately $3,000 a year to maintain. Total 9-year cost. $22,000 purchase plus approximately $27,000 maintenance equals $49,000 total. Compare that to a new S690 in 2015. $450,000 financed over 7 years. Payments of approximately $6,000 per month. Total 7-year cost. Over $500,000 including interest. Plus maintenance. Plus depreciation. Total real cost, probably $600,000 for equipment that does the same work my $49,000 combine does. $550,000 difference. That difference is real estate, is investment capital, is financial security, is the $11 million cash I had to buy the dealership, is the reason I own property instead of making payments, is the proof that the mocked approach was correct and the recommended approach was expensive, is the vindication that took time to demonstrate but demonstrated completely. I'm 58 now. Own 800 acres of farmland debt-free. Own the used equipment business on valuable real estate. Own liquid investments worth several million. Own retirement security most farmers don't have. Built it all by doing what dealers mocked, by buying old equipment, by paying cash, by avoiding debt, by maintaining carefully, by understanding equipment at engineering level, by making informed decisions instead of following dealer advice, by being laughed at in 2018 and being successful in 2024. The dealers who laughed learned. Some learned. Some still don't understand. Some still think new equipment and aggressive financing is the answer. Some still haven't connected their struggling businesses to their business model. Some still mock farmers who buy used. Some will fail like Richardson's dealership failed. Some will learn like Bradley learned. Some will eventually understand that the agricultural equipment financing model serves manufacturers and dealers more than farmers. That it creates dependence and debt and fragility. That it makes farmers vulnerable to market downturns. That it concentrates wealth at the top of the supply chain while farmers struggle at the bottom. My business exists to provide an alternative, to show farmers there's another way, to help them make informed decisions based on engineering knowledge and economic reality instead of dealer profit motives, to teach them total cost of ownership analysis that factors in purchase price, plus maintenance, plus depreciation, plus opportunity cost of capital tied up in equipment versus invested elsewhere. To demonstrate through real examples and real numbers that equipment doesn't have to be financed. That old equipment properly selected and maintained can outperform new equipment poorly financed when you measure success by farmer profit instead of dealer commission. That ownership beats payments when you calculate total cost over equipment lifetime instead of monthly payment amounts. That independence beats dependence when markets turn and you need flexibility. That the mocked approach was actually the smart approach all along. And the recommended approach was expansive manipulation disguised as professional advice. Young farmers come to me now. Farmers starting out with more ambition than capital. Farmers with limited resources trying to enter an industry with massive equipment cost barriers. Farmers who can't qualify for equipment financing because banks see agriculture as risky and young farmers as especially risky. Farmers who've been told by traditional dealers they can't farm without new equipment, can't compete without modern technology, can't succeed without aggressive financing. Farmers who've been effectively excluded by a system that requires constant new equipment, sales, and substantial debt capacity. Farmers the traditional system rejects. I help them. I sell them equipment they can actually afford. Equipment that actually works despite being old. Equipment that lets them start farming without starting with crushing debt. Equipment that proves you can farm successfully without following conventional dealer advice or industry norms. Take James Rodriguez, 24 years old. Came to me in 2022. Wanted to farm. Had access to land through family lease arrangements. Had saved $18,000 working construction and farm labor. Traditional dealers told him he needed minimum $60,000 down payment for financed equipment. Needed to qualify for $200,000 in equipment loans. Needed credit history he didn't have. Needed co-signers he couldn't get. Needed to wait. Needed to save more. Needed to prove himself. Effectively needed to not farm until he already had farming success. Circular logic that excludes young farmers. I sold him a 1976 John Deere 4430 tractor for $11,000 and a 1980 to 7720 combined for $16,000. $27,000 total. Left him $11,000 for operating costs and repairs. He farmed successfully. Made profit his first year, despite everyone assuming he'd fail with obsolete equipment. Expanded his second year. Bought more land access. Bought additional equipment from me, a 1971 4324 backup. Built an operation that works. That's profitable. That has no equipment debt. That proves the traditional dealer model isn't the only path. That proves old equipment and cash purchases and avoided. Debt can launch farming careers the traditional system says are impossible. James is now 26. Farms successfully. Maintains his equipment himself using knowledge I taught him and YouTube videos and farmer forums. Has no equipment payments. Has accumulated equity instead of debt. Plans to buy land in 5 years with savings traditional farmers his age spent on equipment payments. Will own property before age 31 while his peers who followed conventional advice make payments. Will prove through results that the path everyone said was impossible was actually the smarter path. Will be the next generation's example of equipment decisions determining financial futures. Take Maria Santos, 32 years old, single mother, 2 kids, working full-time plus farming, small acreage. Wanted to expand, needed combine. Traditional dealers told her she needed to finance a $150,000 used combine minimum. Needed full-time farming income to qualify. Needed to quit her regular job to farm full-time to afford the equipment needed to farm full-time. More circular logic, more barriers, more exclusion. I sold her a 1979 6620 combined for $19,000. She kept her day job. Farmed after work and weekends. Made it work. Harvested successfully. Built slowly. Added acreage gradually. Increased farming income while maintaining salary income. Reduced financial risk by diversifying income sources instead of betting everything on farming. Made smart choices using equipment costs she could manage. Built an operation that supports her family without requiring massive debt. Proved that farming doesn't require all-or-nothing equipment commitments. Proved that old equipment can enable part-time farming that transitions to full-time farming as income allows and circumstances permit. Maria is 35 now. Farms 320 acres. Still works part-time. Equipment still works. 0 equipment debt. Building toward full-time farming through patient accumulation instead of aggressive leverage. Teaching her kids that financial prudence matters, that debt is optional, that success doesn't require looking successful, that old equipment maintained properly beats new equipment barely afforded. That smart beats fast. That patient beats aggressive. That she's building something they'll inherit debt-free because she chose ownership over appearance and strategy over convention. Take Robert Chun, 57 years old, been farming 40 years. Always financed equipment, always upgraded regularly, always did what dealers recommended. Accumulated over $400,000 in equipment debt by 2020. Market downturn hit. Couldn't service debt. Facing foreclosure. Desperate. Traditional dealers wanted him to restructure into more debt. Wanted him to refinance at higher rates. Wanted him to commit to payment plans that extended debt into his 70s. Wanted him trapped in their system forever, making payments until he died or sold. He came to me, liquidated his financed equipment, paid off debt, had $60,000 remaining. I sold him a 1975 4630 tractor for $22,000 and a 1981 7720 combine for $34,000. Used his remaining cash for operating costs. He farms debt-free now. Lower overhead, lower stress, lower revenue required for profitability, lower risk, lower pressure. Higher actual profit despite lower gross revenue because costs are controlled. Plans to retire at 65, owning equipment instead of making payments. Will leave his son an operation with assets instead of liabilities. Will exit farming with dignity instead of bankruptcy. Will prove that switching from financed new to paid off old saved his farm and his future. Will demonstrate that it's never too late to change equipment strategy if you're willing to admit previous strategy was unsustainable. Robert is 59 now, debt-free, profitable, sleeping better than he has in decades, no longer stressed about markets and prices and whether he can make payments. Equipment works. Life works. Farming works. Vindication through survival. Proof through results. Success through complete strategic reversal enabled by understanding that equipment. Choices determine financial outcomes more than acreage or yields or commodity prices. These stories multiply. Farmers helped. Equipment sold. Debts avoided. Operations launched or saved or sustained. Traditional dealer models circumvented. Alternative provided. Choice offered. Freedom enabled. Every combine I sell is proof. Every tractor I repair is vindication. Every farmer I help is validation. Every success story is evidence that the mockery in 2018 was based on ignorance, not knowledge. That the assumptions were wrong. That the confidence was misplaced. That the business model that mocks old equipment while pushing financed new equipment serves dealers, not farmers. That alternatives exist. That better exists. That smart exists. That my approach, proven through personal success, now multiplied through business, helping others, proves truth dealers didn't want to acknowledge, because acknowledging it threatens their profit model. The dealer meeting in 2018, where they mocked me, happened in the Marriott Conference Center in Wichita. 43 dealerships. 200 people laughing at my photo. All certain I was wrong. All confident in their model. All believing new equipment and aggressive financing was the answer. All completely wrong. All eventually learning. Some the hard way. Some the very hard way. Some through bankruptcy, like Richardson. Some through restructuring. Some through leaving the industry. All learning that mockery ages poorly. That assumptions built on boom times fail in bust times. That the farmer they laughed at understood equipment economics better than industry professionals. That confidence without knowledge is just arrogance waiting to be proven wrong. J.D. Delis laughed at my old combine I paid cash for. Years later, they were shocked. Shocked that it still worked. Shocked that the farmer they mocked owned their bankrupt dealership. Shocked that the old equipment they dismissed had more value than the new equipment they financed. Shocked that their business model had failed while my approach had succeeded. Shocked that everything they believed was wrong and everything they mocked was right. Shocked that mockery reversed. That vindication arrived. That justice was mathematical. That time proved truth. That the last laugh belonged to the laughed-at farmer with the old combine and the cash purchase and the correct understanding of equipment economics they never bothered to learn. That's the story. That's the lesson. That's the proof. That's what 6 years demonstrated. That's what bankruptcy court validated. That's what owning their dealership location proved. That's what helping farmers with used equipment shows daily. That's what the 1978 7700 combine, still working after 9 years, proves every harvest. That's the vindication. That's the truth. That's farming done right. That's equipment economics understood correctly. That's success measured properly. That's the last laugh. That's the complete reversal. That's shock deserved. That's mockery repaid. That's justice delivered. That's truth proven. That's knowledge vindicated. That's assumptions destroyed. That's confidence revealed as ignorance. That's laughter reversed. That's the dealer meeting photo that became the dealership purchase. That's the combine they mocked becoming the business model that succeeded. That's everything.